Hello, everyone, and welcome. Isis, I'm going to leave you off until we get your camera back. But good morning, everybody. I am Jeff Blankenberg. I am here, as always, with Ryan and Andy and our new friend, Isis. Welcome, Isis.
Ooh, Isis.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, welcome. So for those of you that have been to office hours before, Isis is here from our DAG team, the Developer Advocacy Group. And she is here, as we've had Scott here before and a number of other guests from the DAG team, to answer your questions about certification and some of the other things that you maybe have issues with as you go through your skill building adventure. So a little housekeeping before we get started. Welcome, Isis. Thank you for being here so much. Andy, this is just a pro tip for you on this streaming thing. When the 30-second countdown timer ends, it automatically unmutes all of us, so you don't have to unmute. So I think people probably heard you talking during that little 30-second timer. No big deal. Great. I'm glad you're here. And as you guys can see, Ryan and I are in the same frame.
This is amazing.
We're here together
in
Seattle, which never happens. And we invited Andy, but he said he didn't want to be that close. So
you kind of had to like cover in the background. So
yeah, I mentioned to him that this studio is at best good for two people. So here we are. We're here in Seattle. We're going to be getting together with Andy later today. We have some team meetings to go to. And so I'm glad everybody's here. I see a couple of people in the chat. We have Jokesta. We have Don. Welcome to you guys. I'm glad you're here. And as we do every week, if you guys have any questions for us at all about building for Alexa, building devices, thinking about sounds or audio or anything like that, I would love to do our very best to answer your questions. I see W. Giorgio's here. Brian Tarbox is here. Thank you guys for being here. And hopefully we'll have some good answers and some questions from all of you.
Questions first.
Yeah. In the meantime, I was doing something earlier. I don't know if I'll be able to play this loud enough for you, but I'll try. Let's turn this up just a little bit. Not that much. I was showing Ryan before we started this. I know I've mentioned to you all that I've been working on a slot machine for Alexa. So it's a slot machine, but it'll eventually be like a whole casino kind of experience. And I have somewhere here, I think I can say, let's see if I refresh this page, if I can get this to work. I can give you guys a little bit of a feel for what my slot machine is going to sound like. So I have this, which is kind of the welcome. It's hopefully it's not too loud.
Welcome to Chatsino Slots. You currently have 100 coins available. What would you like to do?
So that's kind of my intro. And as I've talked to you guys about before, like the speech that Alexa says there, I actually have like 10 variations of that. So it's always a little bit different. And then it inserts your credit amount into whatever the speech is. But then we also have this. This is my non-APL version because I broke my APL. But I can say bet 5 and it does this.
Audio Jungle. This is the wager intent handler.
So anyway, so that's you can see, kind of hear the sound of what the background noise will be when the slot machine is rolling. And then I got these cool sounds made by a sound designer out of Ukraine, actually. And he made me all these real stops. And so each one of them is a different note. If you imagine like hitting the keys on a piano, and they sound like this. So those get evenly spaced out. And so you can go up the sounds 4 and 5 and on and on. And so each one of those makes a different sound. And what's cool is that as you hear the slot machine hitting and each one of those reels stopping, you can audibly hear without it having to tell you whether or not you match the same symbols just by hearing the notes. So it's kind of a fun way to be engaging in an audio only way, but there will be an APL visual element to that as well if you have a device with a screen. So I see Joel Work is here and Luke Leon on YouTube. Daniel Johnson on LinkedIn has a question. What elderly or aging in place Alexa devices have some promise? I just started helping my 81 and 83-year-old grandparents age in place, and my mind is going fast about some Alexa skills that might help. Don't know. And so what Daniel's really asking is, what are the kinds of things that I can easily have my aging grandparents who are maybe living in their house still, or maybe have moved to some kind of care facility. what are some things that I could have them use to be able to use Alexa in an effective way? Well, I can tell you, just having gone through this. Now, I don't mean to make this sad at all. My grandmother, who was 100 years old, passed away last month, which is sad. But I mean, she lived a fantastic 100-year life. But prior to that, we did have Alexa in her apartment. She lived in an assisted living, but I mean, she was really still living quite independently, even at 100. And there were a few things that we had set up for her. One is obviously some of the first party like built-in functionality that are available on the devices. We made sure that she had an easy way to call any of us, and she could make a video call because she came up pre-cell phone. So we had a cell phone for her, but it was a tiny flip phone with giant buttons, so she could see them really well. But she never really got into like the whole idea of like iPad culture and phones and all of that kind of stuff. That was never her thing. But to be able to talk to a device that's just sitting there, that is for the most part just her clock, and be able to have one of her grandchildren or her son or whoever show up on the screen, that was some of the most magical things that I'd ever had happen for her. And so we set it up so that she had specific contacts that she could call and say, call Bob, which is my dad, or call Rick, which is my uncle. So like that kind of stuff was easily set up and managed. But there's a number of other bits and pieces that you can start to introduce to that. One thing I always recommend is setting up drop-in capabilities on the device, because one of the biggest concerns when you have someone that's elderly living by themselves, or even as a couple still, is that something could happen. And when they don't answer your cell phone calls, when they aren't responding, sometimes you need to know what's going on. And if they don't live nearby, then that can be pretty challenging. And so we had drop-in capabilities turned on. We never used it unless it was an emergency, but we could open the camera and drop in, and it had a nice angle of her whole apartment, so we could get a feel for what's going on. And we could even talk to her. And we didn't use it for this purpose, but she did have a fall a few years ago. And it would have been really great to be able to say, "Hey, are you okay?" And she could say, "No, I've fallen and I can't get up," whatever. Like that kind of stuff would have been really useful. So I think those two things come to mind specifically. But also one of the other things that is really, really important for folks that are aging is just mental stimulation, giving them the opportunity to engage and do something, because it's very easy to just sit around and watch TV or read or whatever. And like you really want to get the brain churning, solving problems, thinking, whatever it might be. And so there are lots and lots of games that are very friendly to those kinds of folks. One example I love to give is the TV show Jeopardy! When you think of the people that religiously watch Jeopardy, you generally think of an older demographic, maybe not 80, 90, but certainly older people. And as you think about that demographic, being able to play that same game every day on your device forces you to think and like engage with something. So those are just a couple of the things that I would recommend. I believe, though, and I'll have to dig into this, I believe there are some really great resources out there that specifically cover this. And if I get an opportunity, maybe we can dig up and find a link for you because I feel like there is a website, either a part of our website specifically, or there is a website out there that specifically focuses on this problem. But hopefully those are a couple of good tips for you. Santosh says, hello. W. Giorgio says, Space Marauders Alexa game is in beta. If you guys want to reach out on Twitter or Twitch, his username is Wrongholt, W like the word wrong as in incorrect, HOLT. Space Marauders is a pretty cool game you guys might want to check out. So reach out to W. Giorgio, Wrongholt on Twitch or Twitter, and he can get you in. W. Giorgio is also excited that the Chatsino is coming back. I am also excited about that. Daniel Johnson must be one of our old timers because he put bang slots 21. And for any of you that remember a long time ago, I used to have a chatbot running here, and you could play a lot of the casino games that I was building via chatbot right here in the chat. But that is no longer the case because I just haven't fired the code up in a while. Brian Tarbox also mentioned Care Hub. That's something else that you might want to look into. Harry on YouTube is giving himself a happy birthday wish. He's saying happy birthday to himself. So Harry, happy birthday.
I respect that.
April
I respect
5th.
that a lot.
I wouldn't have known. So now we can all welcome you, and hopefully some of the people in the crowd will wish you a happy birthday as well. He's over on YouTube if you want to hit him up there. Okay, Naveed Gamorlu on LinkedIn says, I have some problems. The first one is people are detected or aren't detected don't work. I probably just need a little more context on that one. There is a setting on the device that allows you to detect people and like turn the screen on automatically. I don't know if that's what you mean, or if you mean like actual people detection, like voice detection when they're speaking to a device inside a skill. Would love to know more about what you mean by that. But the second one, my device can't play music from my Echo Dot 4th gen. Again, lots of other contextual questions, and I am not a wizard when it comes to the consumer-facing features of things like just playing music. If you're talking about playing music from a skill on an Echo Dot 4th gen, we can talk about that. But if you're just talking about like, hey, my Spotify doesn't work on this device, or Apple Music or Amazon Music or whatever, I am less knowledgeable about those things. And my best recommendation for you on that would be to open just a customer service request, which you just go to Amazon.com, or if that's not your local geography, Amazon. Whatever your local geography is, and reach out to them and see if they can't help you diagnose that, because that is not something I have a ton of knowledge about. Andy, have you ever had that experience where you just had devices not support a specific feature? And like generally, my solution is always reboot it, but I didn't know if you've encountered anything like that.
Oh, we're heavy music players at our house. We play it all the time, and sometimes music just doesn't play when you ask it to. It eventually resolves itself. I'm not sure why it does that. Of course, my kids look at me as being able to fix that.
Right, Dad, work on this. Can't you just make it happen?
Yeah, just fix it.
I'm also curious to know,
to do that.
Your adjective was vague. Do you mean that you listen to like a lot of like heavy music?
Oh, no.
Or just a lot of music?
Music is almost always playing in our house. We had to go with a family plan for Amazon Music because my kids like to listen to different, like their own music in their rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't even use like the 5 accounts it comes with. It's all one account, but you can use it in different rooms, play different music at the same time.
Cool.
So
yeah, that's perfect.
They've been doing that since they were very young.
Cool. How about you, Isis? I want to give you a little opportunity to talk. Do you listen to a lot of music on Alexa?
Yes, I do. I actually have my personal Spotify account, so I'm always listening to music into Spotify. What I do when it doesn't work is also what you do. I reboot the device or enable and disable the skill, and then I started it again. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So hopefully some of that helps you, Naveed. But we'll keep digging as we get further into these comments. So Luke on YouTube says, when Alexa is reading a Kindle book to me and I'm following along reading the Kindle book with the tablet phone, sometimes Alexa skips paragraphs or repeats them like it's out of sync. How can I fix this? I use that technique with Alexa because it's a way for me to practice English, since English is not my first language. That's a fantastic.
That's really
cool. I really
love
that.
Hear someone pronounce words and then you kind of follow along. That's brilliant. That's really good.
Yeah.
I found that I was trying to do some of that. Just a side story. I don't know if everybody's familiar with a TV show on Netflix called Squid Game. I think a lot of people watch that game or watch that show. But
I watched it because you told me to.
Yeah, and it was.
You said watch just the first episode,
and you're in, right? Did you finish it?
I did. I loved it. Yeah, it was a great series. Maybe it tells you something about me. I'm not entirely sure.
But they had the option for overdub, right? English dubbing. And my wife and I tried to watch it with the Korean audio, but then with English subtitles, so that I could try to like pick up.
Which is the proper way to watch it,
right? Because it's weird otherwise. Like the mouths don't match, and it's a whole thing. But it was I didn't learn a lot of Korean, I'll be very honest, but it was a very interesting way to watch a TV show. So it gets out of sync and it skips paragraphs. This feels like really good feedback for the Alexa and Kindle teams. But I don't know if we should try to, this feels like we should address it from the consumer side, because we're not really talking about skills or software development or anything like that. Luke, and I'll get to this, maybe you've already answered this, but have you reached out to Amazon customer service to ask about this, or reached out to your Kindle team and said, hey, like, this seems to be an issue. If you haven't, like, I would recommend doing that, and I can try to find ways to escalate that too. But working at Amazon, it's a gigantic company, and so it's probably honestly easier for you to reach out to their customer service team than it is for me. But I would be more than happy to dig into this if you haven't had any success trying that.
I've never done it this way. I read books with Audible, and so I have Audible playing through Alexa and other ways, but I've never done it this way. And experienced this myself. But yeah, I think the consumer side is the right way to approach that. It shouldn't be doing that.
So. No, it definitely shouldn't. It should read every word.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be interpretation, right?
Right.
This paragraph, we can skip this one. All right. Rockalock on Twitch says, I live in an over 55 community. It's interesting how we phrase that. Is he over 50? He or she over 55? Or does he
have to be?
Or you could be like a 27-year-old just partying down.
Ooh, that's frowned upon.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It is.
All
At least in Arizona.
All right. So
you can stay there for like 30 days and then you have to get out.
Got it. So they get several messages via email weekly from their HOA or their board or whatever. And it is a certified skill that tells the user the latest headlines about those emails.
Cool.
That's awesome. That's a clever solution. I use web pages to insert the info into a MySQL database, which Alexa uses. I want to send a notification to users of the skill whenever there's a new headline added to the database. Can I use proactive events to do this? How can I trigger them? Can an intent in the skill do that? Yes. So ultimately, it looks very similar to the same way that you respond to a skill request. So you've built a skill. So what happens is you receive a JSON payload in your skill, and then you have some code that runs that makes a decision about what should happen, and you create a new JSON payload and you pass that back to Alexa, and then Alexa does some things based on what you told it. When you send proactive events, when you send notifications, you're doing the exact same thing. So your server, Lambda, whatever it happens to be, is going to send a JSON payload to a very specific location with a very specific type of command that is a notification. Now, the important thing to remember is that it's not going to announce your notification to the user. What's going to happen is all the same stuff that you see a number of other ways. The ring on the device is going to turn yellow. It might beep, but that will be the extent of what the device will do. The user will then have to say, what are my notifications? Or give me my notifications or whatever. And then Alexa will say, oh, you have 3 notifications. You had a package delivered today. Here's your HOA update and whatever else. And it'll read those notifications to you. So the user still has to make a choice to hear the notification. Because I can tell you the moment that I can audibly just broadcast information through a device, one, it'll be abused to no end. People will be just like, hey, don't forget to buy our stuff and do, like, it'll be crazy. But the downside to that for me is that being a big sports fan, I have all of these ideas for skills that I want to build. For example, I'm a big baseball fan. There is a baseball game almost every day. There's no way I'm watching every game. But it would be super cool to get a notification like when my team scores. Just like a little light goes off and like, boop, Indians are winning 4-2. Like, I would be totally down with that going off in my house every single time the Indians score a run or against the Guardians. My apologies. In every situation, in every game. I'd be totally down with that. That'd be kind of like a cool, fun thing.
Would your wife be down with that?
Not even slightly.
Yeah.
But I would be totally fine with it. And so those kinds of notifications, I think, would be super cool. I've also had a bunch of hockey fans that would just love, like, if you think about at a hockey game when a goal is scored, like this red lamp kind of spins right behind a goal to announce that, in fact, the puck has gone inside the goal. A lot of hockey fans have asked me how they could do something like that. They want to control the LED, have the red light spin around just like a hockey lamp and go off when your team scores a goal, which is far less frequent than a run in baseball. But none of those things are possible today. So, Rockalock, I hope I've answered your question, which is that you can trigger your Lambda however you want to do that to send those notifications, but you're just sending another JSON payload. But you would need probably a trigger on your database, or you would need some kind of long polling system because it doesn't need to be immediate, I would imagine. So you could have your Lambda. You could have a Lambda that just calls your Lambda every 10 minutes, let's say, and checks to see if the thing is true. And if the thing's true, then it sends the notification.
Yeah, well, go back to his question. He said, I use web pages to insert the info in my MySQL database. I could interpret that two ways. One, you're using like a MySQL admin web page. It's kind of like some custom thing, or out of the box thing where you're inserting records in the database. If it's a custom website that you've built, you could just simply insert the data into your database and then
Also make the call.
that'd be the perfect time to make the call to the Alexa service endpoint to say send this notification.
Yep.
That
That would be great, actually. Yeah, I mean, if you already have that server process happening and you have the trigger, then I think that's the best way to go. But I use web pages to insert the info could mean a number of things.
Yeah.
So whether or not you have control of what happens when the data is submitted is ultimately deciding whether or not you can be on that trigger. Daniel, we're back to the options for the elderly. The drop-in is good. Already had that issue of a fall and no answering the phone for 16 hours.
Ooh.
Thanks for sharing about your grandma. Certainly happy to. I'm an open book. That's no problem. But yeah, I think that's a really valuable one. But you also want to be really careful about it because I mean, think about like I'm a 45-year-old adult, and if someone told me, hey, I'm going to put a camera in your house that I can turn on anytime I want, like that's discomforting. Like if anything, it probably feels like it takes a little dignity away. That like this person can just tune in whenever they feel like it and see what's going on in my life. Not that there's anything to really see, but it's just you don't feel like you're in full control anymore. So it is important to make sure that they understand how it works and how they can stop it. Because the way drop-in works is it opens the microphone immediately, but it does not open the camera for, I think, 5 seconds. And so that's a deliberate delay, and then it slowly fades into the camera, giving you an opportunity to say, no, Alexa, stop, or whatever. So as long as they know, like, no, I'm fine, I don't want you turning the camera on, or, whatever. Like, when I'm 85 years old, if I want to roll through my apartment wearing very few clothes, that's fine. Like, that should be up to me, but I don't necessarily want to be on camera, right, or have somebody tuning in. So, make sure you're really conscientious about that fact, because I think that's something we forget about sometimes about taking care of older people. Okay, Brian Tarbuck says you can set up rules to notify you if the person has not used Alexa in several hours, among other things. Brian, that's not something I had realized. That's very cool. I think you're referring to CareHub, where you can actually go in and set a bunch of rules about, like, especially if it's a device with a camera. It's not necessarily like recording anything, but it can detect presence. So it knows whether or not a human has walked by, and if you look at the data, it actually has, it's more like a wireframe than a video or anything.
I just had in my head from the old TV show Lost, where they're in the hatch and they have to enter in this code.
Yeah.
Every like 14 hours, setting something that up for your loved one to have to check in.
Yeah.
That's what made me think of that. But
that can be good or bad though. Like
it's terrible. It's
right.
terrible
I think about like all the home security systems that people have that only ever are set off by the homeowners themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, it's not to suggest that they should.
I wasn't suggesting that's what they should do. It's just that is what put that
I just reminded you of it. Yeah.
I gotcha. Speaking of TV shows, we've been talking about favorite TV shows earlier. I just got onto a new show. By the way, I'm only now taking recommendations for TV shows from Stephen King. I actually tweeted him about this because it was fantastic. So is anybody here watching Severance?
No.
This is a really, really interesting concept for a show. I'm not giving anything away. This is the premise of the show. But basically, imagine a world where you can have a surgery where a chip is implanted in your head, and when you go to work,
heard about this.
You pass through like a sensor or an elevator or something like that, and the chip flips on, and you don't know anything about your outside life. You are just there, and you're focused on work, and you're at work, and you're basically like two separate people in your head. You are your work person, and that's the only person you're aware of when you're at work. And then when you leave, when you go back out through that sensor, it flips the other way, and now you are only your personal life. And they don't cross. You can't go home stressed from work. You can't be worried about, because you don't know any of it exists. You don't even know like what you do at work or who you work with or any of that kind of stuff. It's a really interesting, weird show.
It's on Apple TV.
It's on Apple TV. Yeah. It's fantastic. That's not the one I wanted to talk about, though. The one I'm mentioning, Lost. You reminded me that there is a new show my wife and I just started watching. It's called From. It's not like Lost. The only real similarity it has is that within the first 2 episodes, you have 1,000 questions. Like, how can that be? And what is this? And how do... Anyway, I don't want to give anything away from that show, but if you guys are looking for new TV, check out From. It's I think it's on Epix or some other weird service, but it is It's unbelievably good. Anyway, and a guy from Lost is in it. Okay, so that's enough about TV. Oxygen Box. While trying to test the skill locally in VS Code, I'm getting the error, cannot find module I18 next. Is this not part of the Alexa SDK? I think it was. I don't know if it still is. And if it can't find it, it may just, maybe you just need to do an npm install. I'm going to have to check that. GitHub. I'm going to GitHub right now. I know you guys can't see my screen, but let's just take a look here and look at the package. It is not. So if I'm looking at the package JSON for the Node SDK, I do not see I18 next. I'm going to go one more place because it may be buried.
No,
I don't see it. No, I do not see it there. So that's a simple npm add, though, especially if you're developing locally. That should be a pretty simple addition to your work. But it does not appear that I18 Next is actually built into the SDK. There's no dependencies on that, from what I understand. But it's easy enough to add, and I know a lot of people like to use that for a number of things. So there you go. Yeah, Oxygen Box. I think that answers your question. All right. Rockalock says there's an organization called Tech Enhanced Life that reviews a variety of digital devices and non-digital. I'm assuming that's coming back to the elderly devices question. Agency 2 says, my ticket closed about the issue we discussed last week. I know you and I have chatted on Slack, so we can continue that conversation there. What is this link Brian Tarbach shared? I hate how hard it is to copy a link here.
I didn't know you could copy it.
Yeah, you just got to be like, you got to have a little finesse. So I didn't want to do that.
Oh, see, that's what I end up always doing.
Yep. Brian, I can't really easily get your link. I'll do this. Nope, that's not going to work. It's called Alexa Together. Let's just go to that and see. Sweet, cool. I did that right. Weird. Well, okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. Rockalock says he's 73. Goodness, good for you. I hope I'm still doing cool stuff like this when I'm 73. Okay, this is an interesting one because I'm actually writing some stuff on this right now. Don would like to know, I am interested in knowing what a developer advocate does. What is a day in the life of ISIS like? ISIS, we might just let you go on a little monologue here. To what extent do advocates get involved with the skill architecture to argue design with Alexa certification? What are your thoughts on this, Isis? What does a normal day for you look like?
Well, first of all, the DAG team is divided into two smaller teams, the Viz one and the Tech one. And well, the Tech one is the one that it could tell you more about the skill architecture for Alexa cert, but because they know more about it. And I'm part of the Viz team. But what we usually do is one of the main projects we have, among others, all directed to developers, of course. What we do is to solve some cases, and we search into our internal information as well as in developer console for responses to your questions for the cases we received. And we try to help you with the best solution possible. Also with that, we dig into other many teams. We work along with them to solve your cases. I don't know. Maybe one of them is that there's an issue in the developer console, and then we redirect your case to the relevant team, and they work on that. And when they have solved that, we receive a response from them, and then we come back to you and tell you that everything is okay now, and then you can use again your developer console, for example. That's just a little example there. Yeah.
And I would imagine a decent number of the tickets that you encounter are potentially like bugs or issues that developers have encountered or found. Do you find that you are communicating directly with our product teams and things like that to say, hey, this seems like this is an issue or this might be broken? Is that something that comes up from time to time?
Yes, we can do that. Well, when we are not sure about that, we have to ask to some other teams, but we are always looking for the response to try to give the best, the fastest response, and the better, of course, the best one.
Cool. And this is more a curiosity for me. I know that you guys focus a lot on the contact us requests, so all the forms that come in. How many of those a day do you think is like a normal day that you get through?
How many tickets?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't. I've seen around 20, 30 per day, maybe.
Well, that's a lot. I mean, to think about each one of those being a unique issue and unique focused problem.
Yes, but well, I'm just telling. I'm just counting these ones.
Sure.
Of course, the tech team might receive some other 30. So yeah, we are around an average of 60 tickets per day, maybe.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, Stefania's here. It's always good to see Stefania. I need to talk to you about potentially making an appearance here in a couple weeks. But she is suggesting that Astro, when we can finally get our hands on one, that's been a hot topic around here. But when we can finally get an Astro, the robot buddy can kind of pal around and play games with you and engage and do all sorts of stuff.
What she wrote was, that's why we have an... Does she have an Astro? She's saying that we have an Astro now. Does she have one? Is she saying that she has one?
I think she's using...
I'll be very jealous if she has one. How does she get one, but we don't have... Like this, I have a lot more questions, stuff.
I like your passion. I think she's using the Royal Wii, the Amazon Wii.
All right.
But...
These are elusive robots that are in high demand.
Right,
so.
But if she's got one rolling through her home...
we need to talk stuff.
We need to talk. All right, so let's see. Brian Tarbuck says Severance is a cool concept, but there's way too many long walks through very long corridors. That is a thing I'm going to warn you about with that show, is that it's this weird underground office with very long hallways, and a lot of the show is just them walking through these long white hallways. Okay. Can this be triggered by a secret intent within the skill? When I try this approach, the code I've developed to be used with an intent within the skill gives an invalid scope error. The utterance that will trigger that intent will only be known by the person entering the info into the database. I generally think that this is probably not a good idea. And let me give you a reason why. When you go through certification, all of your intents are going to be scrutinized. And as a result of that, if something falls outside the normal lines of your skill, like this secret intent seems to have a lot more access or functionality than the rest, certification probably is going to take issue with that. Even if you don't publish what that intent is, even if it's a secret set of words, oftentimes you have to remember that your skill is designed to be used by any Alexa user. And so as a result of that, hidden weird secret things, unless they are meant to enhance the actual experience of the skill and not just not meant to be used by most people because they don't know it exists, that security by obscurity kind of approach, I don't think you'll have a lot of success pulling that off. In addition to that, that intent would then have to send a response back that is a spoken, like normal Alexa response. Because if you don't do that, you fail. And I think what you're suggesting is that you would just say, like, cue the notifications, right? And then it would send notifications out to all of your users. But because it's doing that, it can't send a response back to the skill to be like, okay, I sent the notifications. It's a either or. So I actually believe, now that I've talked this through, that no, you could not do that, because even though the intent is secret, it would still have to work. And what you're proposing would kind of break the model a little bit. So
I like the creativity though.
it's a very creative idea, but I think that every intent you have in your skill should be able to be used by every user. Now, here's another thing you could do. You could build a beta skill that is only for you and never published,
Oh, that's good.
that talks to the same data and does that thing for you. You could do that, absolutely. And then you would be the only one that has access to that intent also. But you can build a skill for yourself, never publish it, and use it forever. So that might also be an option for you, Rekalock.
That's actually one of my favorite features that not everyone knows, that if you go and create a skill in the Alexa console, and if your developer account has the same email address as your email address used to register all your Alexa devices, and you turn on testing for that skill, you can use it on all of your Alexa devices. And I do this all the time. I have all kinds of skills that are just in the console, and I never intend on publishing them, but they do all kinds of secret things for me that I don't want anyone in the world to be able to do.
Right.
And I love that. And that not a whole lot of people realize that right away, and they think they have to publish a skill in order to be able to use it in their house, and that's not true.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of reasons why you might want to build a skill just for yourself.
Yeah, like chicken coops.
Like I want to build one that sends me to inbox 0 automatically. Right? Just delete my emails, and it just goes out and calls an API, and boom, they're all gone. Like I probably needed to preserve some of them, but they're all gone.
Yeah.
That would be refreshing. Just start my morning that way every day. It'd be
That
great.
works.
To clarify, Stefania does not have an Astro, and she was using the Royal Wii. So
I don't know. I need to. Yeah, I'll talk to you still, Steph.
Oxygen Box mentioned something interesting though. George Jetson is currently the only one he knows with an Astro. Makes sense. Astro was the dog from the show. But I have a piece of trivia that I only learned on TikTok.
Is it a dad joke?
It's not. No, this is not even a dad joke. Do you guys know, speaking of George Jetson, that based on the information that's available in that TV show, that George Jetson was born this month, April 2022. That's what year we're in. We're in 2022. 2022. Because he is 40 years old in the Jetsons, and that show takes place in 2062. And there's a point where they talk about his birthday being in April. So George Jetson was born this month, which is pretty crazy. So if somebody named Jetson does not name their child George, they're really missing out.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little bit of trivia for all of you. Dewish wants to know on LinkedIn if there will be a recording to watch later. Yes, every one of our office hours are available. The recording is available on our Twitch channel, on our YouTube channel, and I believe even on Facebook and LinkedIn, they are preserved as a recording. But I know for sure you can find it on our Twitch and our YouTube. So if you don't find it on those other channels afterward, you should be able to find it there. And you can find both of those are Alexa Devs. So if you go to youtube.com/Alexa Devs or twitch.com/Alexa Devs, you should find a list of our videos there. And you can find all of the old office hours and all of the old videos that we've made for all sorts of things there. That is it. That's it. Thank you all for being here. No, I'm just kidding. We're at the end of the list though. Should we prepare people for what your next broadcast from home will look like?
Oh, I've had to take down my hexagons. As we know, last week I mentioned I'm relocating to Seattle. My realtor suggested that my home office not look like a Twitch streaming studio, so I've had to take down everything. And so I had to take down all the hexagons, and it was just a wallpaper that was up, which peeled off all the paint when I took it down. So then I had to repaint. So now behind me, when you see me next week, I guess I'll just have a normal beige, yellowish wall behind me. It'll be so boring.
So boring.
But I also took down my fancy lights, my fancy camera. Yeah, sad, but relocating. So that's exciting. Yes.
Yeah. So he's gonna have a boring backdrop. We'll both be here next week.
Not here. We'll be
will be here in office hours, but not here in this room.
Right.
And then the following week, I'm going to be on an airplane for office hours, so that's when I need to talk to Stefania or somebody else, and
I think
We'll
I have
get-
a conflict too.
we'll get a new team in here for the 19th. So Salil on YouTube says there's some issues with using the audio tag in SSML in Alexa. Salil, I'd love some more details on what you mean by issues. Oftentimes when I see people using the audio tag, it feels like there's an issue with the tag, but there's actually an issue with your audio file. And I would be happy to walk you through those specific details. In fact, let me see if I can find a link to that really quick.
Yeah, the file has to be a very specific format in order for it to work, and that's usually the problem.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get you the two pieces of information that are really there's three pieces that are the most important. No audio file can be longer than 240 seconds. So I don't know if you're doing that, but that is 4 minutes. Is that right? 4 minutes? Yeah, that's 4 minutes. And then the bit rate must be here. I'll take each one of these. The audio file cannot be more than 240 seconds.
That's not gonna work.
Can't copy. I'm using a computer that I never use, so we're having some issues. Oh, you followed all the rules and regulations on the link under SSML. Okay, cool. I think I figured out the issue. Well, let's know what the issue is.
Sometimes it's a permission issue. Is it actually, like, if you're hosting
is
an
it
S3, is it
publicly accessible?
publicly accessible?
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, Salil, if you want to share what your solution is, it sounds like maybe you fixed it, which is fantastic. Fabio says, Jeff, please present Andy and Isis. Which area do they work for? I forget that, like, we probably should do this more often. So Isis, I'll let you introduce yourself and your title, but she works on our developer advocacy team. And Andy is a peer of me and Ryan. So the three of us are kind of the three amigos of solutions architecture for Alexa. And so I'll let them both introduce themselves. Isis, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm a developer advocate. I'm actually one of the newest members of the team.
Oh.
I started with the developer advocacy group in February, and before that, I was part of the certification team. So I also kind of know the other part of the skills. So yes, and I've been working here in Amazon for around 3 years. So
Nice.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, welcome, and I'm glad you're here on Office Hours today.
Yeah.
Andy, I feel like you've been here for a while. Like you're coming up on a year, I think, right?
On this team, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been at Amazon over 10 years. And I remember the early days of the Echo, before there was an Alexa organization. My team, I actually got my hands on a pre-release Echo device and actually played around with one of the early skills way back in the day. So that was a long time ago. But now I focus more on device makers, and my area of expertise is more, what I'm trying to become my area of expertise is the smart home skill APIs, and just in smart home in general. I know a little bit about AVS as well, although I would definitely defer to others who know more about it than me, but I'm happy to try and take a stab at it like I did yesterday on Slack. So
sure.
Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Salil says that the challenge they were having is that they had an ampersand in their URL for their audio file. And it's interesting to me because that's a valid character for a URL. So it's surprising to me.
Does it need to be URL encoded?
That could be it.
I can't remember.
I tend to URL encode everything.
Yeah.
When I'm making those kinds of calls, if I think I'm going to have any weird characters.
What's the URL code? %25?
Man, that's digging deep.
Yeah, back in my PHP days.
That's like asking me for the specific Unicode character codes.
Right.
HTML.
Hold on.
%20 is a space. I don't remember ampersand. Anyway, while he's looking that up, we're going to keep moving. Salil, I think you make a very valid point. I'm gonna mark your comment. I'm actually going to be talking with my certification, or not my certification, the Tech Docs team, and I'll see if I can't mention that to them. Well, one of two things should happen. In my mind, the character should work because it's valid in the URL, so it should just work. But I will add that at least to the documentation to let people know that it's going to be an issue. Okay, Don says, are skills submitted for certification routed to different teams based on the type of skill? Like one that has in-skill purchasing or Amazon Pay for Alexa? This feels like a really good question for ISIS. So do you find, are there different teams that certify different types of skills?
No, actually, everybody certifies all the skills that arrives to the related locals, because we are also working for locals, the English locals, the French ones, and Spanish ones mainly.
Sure.
And but everybody, all the team is in charge of the skills. We don't have any division there, special division for the skills. Yeah.
Got it. Fabio's asking an interesting question, and I think the answer is yes. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but the question is, can we use Cloud9 as an Alexa developer console in the future? I think
it could be. You can push up that through the developer, through the forums or the suggestions.
User voice.
Exactly. Yeah. For the user voice feature for all the for the developers, but you can use that.
Cool. What she's saying is that that's a great feature request, but not something that I believe. I think the limitations with Cloud9 today are that you need access to a console to do local debugging inside Cloud9.
They have a console. It's been a while since I used Cloud9, but I thought I got almost everything to work. But maybe not. I think the local debugging, I didn't actually try that.
Yeah. I feel like that's the thing that stands out to me, is there had been a limitation. I don't know if that's been solved, but I feel like that was at least a limitation once.
There was a period of time when I was trying to do a bunch of local development on, not local, but cloud-based development from my iPad. And Cloud9 was mostly getting me there. It didn't quite get me. The Cloud9 interface doesn't necessarily work super great with iPads. I had some issues with scrolling and things like that. So I kind of gave up on that. But I was getting pretty darn close to being able to do development in Cloud9 for Alexa skills. But I didn't do a thorough test of every single feature. And I'm certain that I didn't get to testing local debugging.
Yeah, that sounds correct. So Don's question earlier was about if there was specialization inside certification, and he said,
I want to point something there. Of course, for example, there are, in this case for Amazon Pay, there are testers that certifies that are specialized on that. But just in those cases, for example. But in skill purchase skills, they don't. Everybody should be trained with that. But for Amazon Pay, they should do a special training besides the other one. Yeah.
Gotcha. I know Don has had a number of issues, and I can explain this to you, but he has not had any success in getting his skill certified. But what he's trying to do, at least one of the examples that he used with me, is he wants to build a skill that allows you to calculate your carbon offset. And as an example, I'm somebody that flies a lot, right? So I mentioned on Twitter and a couple of other places just all the flying that I was going to be doing this month. I'm on the road 19 days this month, which is a way more than normal. But if you just calculate all the flights, I think he said it was something like 11,000 pounds of carbon that I am individually responsible for as a result of all of those flights. And I said, oh, that's really cool. And like, how do you calculate that? And what would it cost to offset that? Because there's a lot of like offset calculators and things. And he said it would probably cost, I think he said it was something like 20 or 30 bucks per 10,000. I don't remember his exact number. It was something like that. And he said, and actually his skill with Amazon Pay was designed to do exactly that. So you could calculate your carbon offset and then pay to offset that thing to an organization that can collect that money and actually make the offset. And I think the challenge he's having, $30 for all of the trips. The challenge he's having is that it is basically like taking donations, right? Because they're not necessarily buying anything, although they kind of are. But it would follow a very similar model to people just making a donation, because they're not fulfilling like a purchase necessarily. And I don't know why specifically he's being denied for certification, but I suspect it's probably in that ballpark. So anyway, so he's had some challenges with that, and was wondering, if we could ever find somebody that is deeply and intimately knowledgeable about certification with Amazon Pay, it would be great to introduce the two of them.
I will ask if somebody knows. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That would be great.
Sure.
Tapster says, are there any ways to dig deeper on internal service error? Occasionally I see a session ender request with the reason error. This is a message from Amazon, not in the Lambda, but from the error message, 99% is as above. I have two thoughts on this. And I think I'm going to do this and just, I'd have to go back and change the code. I think this is similar to I'm just going to do it. Let me do this really quick. So I have my code here, and I'm going to break it.
I do have an update on the ampersand thing.
Oh, let's do that.
So instead of ampersand, try %26, which is the URL encoded version of an ampersand. And there's JavaScript. If you're using JavaScript, there's functions to do this. I don't remember exactly what the signature is, but it's URL encoding a string. Try doing that first. I saw someone else, Jeff took away the screen, but someone else posted there's a function for escape XML characters. You might want to try that as well. But when you have like characters that look like XML inside of XML, that's when you can kind of get weird things happen. I deal a lot with this when I'm doing, like I'm a big user of CloudFormation, and I have like this sort of issue where I have inside of my YAML file, I'll have like a string that is JSON that has XML in it, and like weird things happen. And sometimes it's just a game of playing like different permutations of encodings to figure out when things will work.
Right.
It's specifically for CloudFormation. It's a nightmare. There's probably a much better way for me to do it, but that's how I do it. But yeah, try URL encoding or XML encoding, escaping, those sort of things. Might get you there.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, I'm going to run my skill again. I just want to see something, and if this works the way I think it will, we should get an error here.
There was a problem with the requested skills response.
So I think if I can scroll this, I know you guys can't see my screen, but I'll bring it up here in a second if I can. That's not the one I wanted.
Is it the device line? Oh yeah, there.
But this is invalid response. That's not what he's getting.
Yeah.
So what I was going to show you here, let me share my screen really quickly and see if I can't share screen. Great.
Chrome has lost permission to capture your screen.
Right.
Maybe you won't be sharing your screen.
Maybe I won't. Anyway, the thing I was going to show you was in the developer console, in the testing tool, a very subtle thing that a lot of people don't notice is that there's actually two skill invocations that show up when you get errors. And this is assuming you're not like logging everything. But when you get an error like what you're describing, oftentimes I will find that next to the word skill invocations at the top of the testing tool, there is a drop-down that usually just says 1 of 1. But when you get an error like this, you'll have 1 of 2. And the first one shows the response that came in. The second one shows the error that came in as a result of the first one. And so what I'm looking at is an error condition for invalid response, which is because I'm sending, I think, malformed APL. But I wonder if that wouldn't also help you, because I do get some information, a little bit of information anyway, about what was wrong with my skill. So I don't know why. Again, we're working in a very weird environment today. I apologize, but I can't share my screen. But the that is something else that I might also check out. But the question was, how do I dig deeper on it? I see a session ender request with the reason error.
He is getting the message internal service.
Yeah.
Error. So it looks like that trick won't help.
How can you dig deeper? Why would the service internal service error? I wonder if I could just search that and find anything for you.
It's weird to me as it's forming some sort of response.
And I'm sure you've done a little digging on this as well. Yeah, I'm finding some stuff in the forums, but not anything with answers. Let's see if the request types reference has anything for us on that. No, error. No. I don't think that's going to be anything. I don't have a good answer for you on that one, unfortunately. I was hoping that I could find it quickly, but I am not succeeding. The internal service error doesn't feel like something that's caused by you. From what I remember about it, it can be intermittent too, right? Like it happens sometimes, but not all the time. Let me dig into this one for you. I should know the answer to this, and I don't. So let me dig in, and I'll see what I can find for you, and hopefully we'll have an answer soon. Tapster, if you want to hit me on Slack, also, we can try to get this figured out or answered sooner. And for those of you that are like, Slack, what are you talking about? You can go to alexa.design/Slack and join us there. We're having conversations all the time. Andy loves when I have these little interstitial commercials. If you guys aren't there, that's where people are talking about this stuff all day, every day. So if you have questions, if you want to engage with a bunch of other people that are doing the same kind of things that you're doing, this is the place. Join us in Slack. We'd love to have you. Okay, we've got a few more questions and only a few minutes. So let's see. Salil says he did use the escape XML characters function, but it doesn't sound like that. Oh, that's how he solved the issue. Okay.
Yeah.
A LinkedIn user that has not provided their name said, can I switch the language of my code base in the dev console from Python to JavaScript and vice versa? No. The reason for this,
for Alexa hosted.
Yeah. So I assume you're talking about Alexa hosted skills, and with Alexa hosted skills, you have to define whether you want a Python backend or a JavaScript backend, not a Node backend, when you create the Alexa hosted skill. There are a number of reasons I can come up with why that would not work easily. But the primary one would be is if you have a bunch of code written, it's certainly not going to convert it for you. So you'd be starting over. And if you're going to be starting over, it would be just as easy to create a new skill that is Python or Node or whichever direction you're trying to go.
Export the interaction model.
Yeah.
Bring into the new one.
Yep.
So there's no technical reason why. So the Alexa hosted UI for the Lambda controls does not allow you to do it. There's no technical reason why it's that way. It's that way so that you don't accidentally lose all of your work. If you were to use an AWS Lambda function, you could certainly do this. You could just go into the configuration and change the runtime from Node to Python to Java to whatever you want it to be.
Yep.
And then your code would still be there, but it wouldn't function. You'd have to
you'd have to remove it all.
Yeah, you'd have to remove it all and do it all over again. It's just an abstraction layer that the Alexa hosted skill doesn't allow for your own protection.
Right.
So
well, it's not only that, it's because you don't have the ability to create that Lambda function. They do it for you.
Right.
And so those choices are made at a level prior to your access.
Yeah, and this is just one of the, there's many settings. If you go to an AWS Lambda function in the AWS console, there's a bunch of configurations you can do on a Lambda function. Very few of those are actually exposed in the Alexa hosted. you can change the memory size, duration, how long it runs. You can change. You can add environment variables, and there's a bunch of other configurations you can do that just aren't exposed in the Alexa hosted. And yeah, it's a convenience way. It's designed to make it super easy for you to get up and running the Alexa hosted environment.
Right. Yeah, but there's obviously trade-offs.
Yes. Yes.
The other thing I can mention is that I guess the one way you could do this is, let's say you create an Alexa hosted skill, you've got it running in Python, and now you want a JavaScript backend. I do believe with an Alexa hosted skill, you have the ability to change it to a not Alexa hosted skill. So you could spin up an AWS Lambda function that is Node, and then you could just change the endpoint on your skill to point to the Lambda one.
I think you can. Yeah.
Because my concern is if they've already published the skill, they don't want to lose their existing customer base, which they would absolutely do.
Oh, right.
So if they're already published, they need to keep the skill as it is, but they want to change the endpoint. And if you're doing that, you could just change out the endpoint, but you wouldn't be able to change to a new Alexa hosted backend. You would have to choose an AWS backend. We lost Andy because we hit the time. It is 10:01. There's still a couple of questions. I'm going to go bang, bang, bang because I'm being asked to go to a call as well here. So there was a problem with the requested skills response. Don, yes, there absolutely is a way to get more information. What you need to do is use the built-in error handler that's probably already there if you're using the SDK, and you can console.log the error message. I believe it's called the payload. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can give you that answer here really fast because I have it in my code. But if I go to not that, I'm going to dig into this file really quick and just tell you what the thing that you want. It is the error.stack. So inside the error handler built-in function that you have inside the SDK, their error.stack will write to the logs the actual error that you encountered instead of the requested skill could not respond. That is the generic thing that it says, but there is actual error data behind it, like what line it happened on and whatever. All right, I think that is all the questions for today. Thank you guys all for tuning in. It was great to see all of you. I certainly want to thank Isis for being here for her first time. It was wonderful to have you. Hopefully we'll see you here again soon. And to all of you, have a fantastic week, and we will see you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.